Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, future chefs. We are making a really fun episode of Fresh for Kids today. We are going to make some stuffed peppers. They are very delicious, and you can make them in so many different ways. This is something that I definitely make a lot at home, and you can really tailor it to kind of whatever you're in the mood for. Today, I'm going to be making some Asian-inspired stuffed peppers, and they are meat-free. So what we are using, of course, peppers, right? We have a red, a green, and a yellow. I have some scallions. I also have a shallot, which is very similar to an onion. It's just a little more potent, even though it's smaller. I'm going to be using some stir-fry vegetables. And then, of course, some very Asian-inspired flavors with sesame oil, a little bit of chili oil, soy sauce, and garlic. Here's the thing. I like to make my stuffed peppers with couscous instead of rice. And it's very helpful for a couple of different reasons. One is it's really fast. Couscous cooks in 5 minutes, whereas with most rices that you would make, take at least 20 to 25 minutes before it's going to soften up enough to be eaten. So this is a little bit different. You can make it however you like, but I definitely like it with the couscous. It's quick and it's just a little bit of a different texture than using rice also. So I've got everything I need to get started, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about peppers, some things maybe you didn't already know. Like, for instance, all peppers, bell peppers is technically what they're called. They are chili, however, they do not produce capsaicin, which is what makes most chilies or peppers very spicy. They're a little bit more sweet. They are technically a fruit and not a vegetable because they do produce seeds on the inside. Also, they come in both male and female varieties, and the way that you can tell the difference is, see how this one has 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes on the bottom? That one's a female. And this one and this one both have 3, so those are male peppers. Another thing that's really interesting, they all start off green, and depending on their state of ripeness will turn either red, yellow, and sometimes orange. There is a variety called permagreen though, and they are scientifically created to stay green all the time and never change colors. The green are a little less sweet and a little more bitter than the other colors, but essentially they are all quite delicious. Green ones are very popular with entrees, such as stuffed peppers, but the red, yellow, and orange are preferable in salads and things of that nature to add a little bit of bright color to whatever it is that you're eating. So there you have it. Some really fun facts about bell peppers. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to get everything ready for my couscous, and I'm going to chop up my shallots and my scallions, and we'll be back in just a few minutes so you can see what step to take next. Okay, we are back. So what I've done, I have diced up actually, our shallots. I have cut the peppers, and what you want to do, I like to cut them in half. Now, sometimes you will see recipes where it is a whole pepper. I find they're a little bit easier to eat and a little bit easier to make if you do them a little smaller. So I like to cut them in half. And here's my foolproof way for getting them just the way I like them. So you're just going to cut it right down the center like that. You want to get it as even as possible so that both sides of your little bowls, if you will, are the same size. So that's what it's going to look like when you get it open. You're going to see all the seeds on the inside. So what I do, I just grab right underneath that big bunch of seeds, pull those out, and just throw them in the trash. And then you can shake out the extra seeds. And then I like to pull as much of the insides out to give it a really flat surface on the bottom. So it's a little bit easier to fill it up with your stuffing mix. All right, and of course you want to always wash your peppers really well before you use them. So from this point, what we are going to do, we're going to take, I've got a little bit of olive oil in this bowl right here. I've washed my hands, but I am going to take off my ring. And you can just use your hands to put a little bit of oil on the inside and outside of your pepper. This is the fun part. It's a little bit messy, but that's what makes it fun. All right. And of course, if you have an olive oil or vegetable oil that you prefer, use whatever you like best. I really love olive oil. Good for you, and it has wonderful flavor. But you could use a spray also if you don't want to get your hands all messy. All right, we're just gonna, after we put some oil on these, we're gonna put them on our cookie sheet. And your oven should be preheated to 350 degrees. What we're gonna do, we are going to par cook these. What that means is we're just gonna cook them a little bit first before we put our stuffing in, because it takes a little longer for the peppers to get soft, and you don't want the stuffing on the inside to get dried out from being in the oven too long. So it allows you to cook them separately and then put them together, and it makes it delicious. All right, so I'm gonna rinse off my hands. So now that we've got those all oiled up, I'm going to take my kosher salt and I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit on these. And then we're going to put them in the oven at 350 degrees for about 10 minutes. Just so we can soften them up. So now, while those are cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and prepare my couscous. So, of course, rice couscous, whatever you're using, orzo, you just wanna cook it according to the package directions. I'm quite fond of the wild mushroom and herb version of couscous. So that's what I'm going to use. So I've got my water, my oil, and the seasoning pack that comes in the box in my pan here already. But to make it even tastier and give it that little bit of Asian flair, I'm going to add a few things to it. I'm going to add some sesame oil, but just a little. This stuff is very, very potent. A little goes a long way, and if you use too much, it can get quite bitter. So I'm just going to do about a half a teaspoon of that. And then I've got some chili oil too. And again, this is very, very potent, so a little bit goes a long way. So I'm not even gonna fill that half a teaspoon up all the way. We're just gonna put a little bit in. It gives it some color and a little bit of heat. And then of course, we're gonna use a little bit of soy sauce too. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that if you have eaten Chinese food or sushi. You can go with more like a teaspoon on that. We don't want to do too much though, because we don't want it to be too salty. All right, so here's where it gets interesting, right? We're not going to cook our vegetables. Now, you absolutely can. You could pull out your skillet and you could saute these vegetables up. I like them to be a little bit crisp still, so I'm actually going to put them in the water to cook with the couscous, and it will, the couscous will be able to absorb the flavor of our shallots and all of our vegetables. So I'm going to pour those in. Let's get those in there. And of course, I'm not going to use this whole bag because that's a lot. I'm just going to do about half of this bag. These are just stir-fry vegetables. There's some bean sprouts, there's cabbage and broccoli, and some sweet pea pods in there. So we're going to turn that on and let that boil. And the cool thing, like I said about couscous, it cooks really, really fast. It only takes 5 minutes. From the time it starts boiling, what we're gonna do, we'll pour in our couscous, turn it off the heat, and then let it sit for about 5 minutes, and that will be ready to go. And that's our stuffing for the inside. So as soon as that's ready and my peppers come out of the oven, we'll be right back and I'll show you how to put everything together. Okay, we are back. So my couscous is almost ready. I've got about 4 minutes left on my peppers in the oven. And traditionally, stuffed peppers would have a meat rice combination and then be covered with lots of cheese. And we all know I'm a huge fan of cheese. However, most Asian flavors don't really pair up with cheese very well. So we're not using cheese, but that's the great thing about stuffed peppers. You can make it in any way you want. If you would like a Mexican style, you could use a little bit of chipotle powder, some cumin, onions, ground beef, and rice with some cheddar cheese or a Mexican blend on top. It's so delicious. You could do Italian. You could do Mediterranean, whatever flavors are your jam, you can use in a stuffed pepper. So instead of putting cheese on top when we're all finished with the cooking process, I am going to put some scallions and sesame seeds. So scallions, green onions, if you will. Of course, like our peppers, we want to make sure we rinse them off really well. And we're just going to cut off those ends. And then I'm going to cut them. You ever go to a restaurant and they have the kind of fancy looking green onions where they're cut and they're so pretty? That's called cutting on the bias. So what you want to do is you just angle your knife a little bit, kind of like this. So when you cut down, instead of going straight down, you're going to go on a diagonal. And that will give you more of that fancy restaurant green onion shape. Or you can just chop them like normal, whatever you prefer. Another tip when you're cutting green onions, or really any herb or vegetable for that matter, if knives kind of freak you out, and I totally understand where they might, you could use your kitchen scissors as long as they are only ever used for food and washed after you use them. So we are going to chop these up. And the thing with green onions, of course, the closer you get to this white root, the more intense the flavor is going to be. So it's going to be a little bit stronger and a little bit more of that kind of peppery onion flavor that you might think of the closer you get to that white end. The green end, they have that onion taste, but they're not quite as hot or spicy as when you get to the other end. And again, if you don't like green onions, don't put them on. And then we, like I said, we'll top it with a little bit of the sesame seeds, which will complement the little bit of sesame oil that we put in our couscous. So as soon as those peppers come out, they're gonna cool off for just a few minutes because we wanna make sure that they are safe for handling. You don't wanna try to pick them up and start filling them as soon as they come out of the oven. You wanna give them at least about 5 to 10 minutes to rest before you start filling. So we'll be back in just a few minutes, guys. All right, everything is ready. So we are going to stuff these peppers with our delicious couscous mixture. Our peppers are cooled down, so they are good to touch. They're not too hot. And when you see this, our veggies have softened up a little bit, but they're still gonna have a nice little crunch to them. So what we're gonna do, we are just gonna take these peppers one at a time and take our stuffing and fill them up. You want to kind of smush it down in there so you get the maximum amount of filling in each pepper as you can get. So we are going to just continue that with each of these pepper halves. And then when we are finished filling them up, we're going to put them back in our 350-degree oven for about 15 minutes. 15 to 20, depending on your oven, because again, they are pre-softened. We've cooked them already, so you don't want them to be too mushy. If you put cheese on it, what I would recommend is cooking them for the 15 minutes, taking them out, putting your cheese on top, and then putting it back in the oven so that that cheese can melt for about 5 minutes or so. So I'm gonna fill the rest of these peppers. I'm gonna put them back in my oven, and I'm gonna set my timer for 15 minutes. When they come out, we will top it with some of our scallions and our sesame seeds, and then we can eat them. They smell so good. All right, we'll be back in about 15 minutes, guys. There's our timer, and it smells so great in here. So we are gonna take these peppers out. Of course, you wanna make sure you have oven mitts or the help of a grown-up so you don't get burned. Can you hear those? We're gonna put that on a trivet, or we've got a pot holder on there. So don't burn your counter, and make sure that you turn your oven off. Now, of course, these are way too hot to do anything with right now as far as eating or touching. However, I am gonna put my sesame seeds on top because that little bit of heat will open those up and help get that flavor out. It also gives a little bit of a crunch. very mild. And then of course, once they've cooled off enough for us to be able to plate them, we will top them with our scallions. These are so delicious and they're very pretty. They're very colorful. Once they cool down enough, you probably could even pick them up and eat them with your hands if you're into that kind of thing. But of course, you could also use a fork and a knife. Again, this is one of those recipes that you can make at home and have it taste however you like. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of stuffed pepper recipes online, but the basics that we did today, the par cooking for about 10 minutes before you fill them, and then cooking your filling, putting it into the actual peppers, and then cooking for 15 to 20 minutes is going to be sort of that baseline no matter what you decide to fill your peppers with. So I hope that they are delicious. I hope that you love them. And I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. If you take some pictures of your delicious peppers once they are cooked, I would really, really love to see them. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of your January, and we will see you soon. Bye.